love to welcome you to the monthly Spark Talk. My name is Lisa Blue, and I'm the newly appointed Director of Artificial Intelligence Strategies here at Eastern Kentucky University. Through the Spark Talks, I hope to demystify generative artificial intelligence technology while sparking conversations that will lead to innovative teaching and learning strategies across the higher education landscape. So I'm very glad you're here today. Each month, I hope to provide insights and actionable strategies for the integration of GenAI into your teaching, scholarship, and research, thereby enriching your teaching methods, empowering our students, and encouraging its ethical use, while preparing our students for the tech-forward job market that awaits them post-graduation. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's topic, crafting assessments that matter in an AI world. So for me, it really hit home when I was watching this TEDx talk on a Saturday last year, and Mark Netanagara made the point, what is learning when software can answer every question? And this really upset me. I had to stop and think, well, what are we doing here? I mean, how are we going to have to shift what we're doing to make sure that deep learning and critical thinking is still occurring with the students that we're shepherding through this process? And so it's really put us in this uncomfortable space because we've got all the things we've done traditionally, and we're seeing that some of the value is lost because AI can now do all the things. If AI can do the things, then does it make sense to keep doing those things? And this liminal space is characterized by these rapid AI advances. And with each day, we see new abilities. One day, the AI will tell you that it can accurately give you the last 4 decimal places of the irrational number pi, which it's not possible to do. And then maybe the next day, it'll tell you, well, hey, pi as an irrational number does not ever end with decimal places. So I can't give you 4. Tell me which 4 you want, but not the last 4, because that's not possible. And so as we navigate our way through these rapid AI advances, we need to really start thinking about, well, what couldn't we do before that now maybe we can? And as we develop these ideas, we're going to co-create this AI-infused education with our students in real time. So with the AI advances, it's real easy to say, oh my gosh, the only thing I can do is to take everything back to the classroom and paper and pencil all the way, real-time assessments. And I want to caution you against that knee-jerk response. The modern student is not used to handwriting anything. And so it may introduce an unnecessary cognitive burden to them to tell them, hey, you've got just this limited amount of time in class to brainstorm, develop a thesis, and write your 5-paragraph essay. We also need to think about students that need accommodations. Our differently abled students, maybe they have juvenile arthritis and they can't hold a pencil to paper. Maybe we have ADHD students that need a low distraction environment. The options out there are endless, but we don't want to make this an equity problem. We want to make sure that every student has an equitable option to complete the necessary assignments. Now, the other extreme to that is to say, well, AI is amazing. I'm going to use AI to generate this assignment. And then my students, yeah, they're going to use AI to complete the assignment, but that's okay, because then I'm going to use AI to grade the assignment. Wait, what happened here? Where in these arrows can we insert the human? We need a human here. And so we need to think about how to carefully, very thoughtfully integrate AI into the assignments where integrating AI into the assignments makes sense. So I offer to you 2 paths to assessment redesign. We can either stick to our AI resilient strategies where AI is not the easy answer to completing the assignment, or we'll look later at how to construct an AI embracing assignment where we thoughtfully integrate generative AI capabilities rather than just saying, hey, this is the coolest new thing, let's just stick it onto the side of this assignment and roll on like we usually do. When we're thinking about AI resilience, we have got this awesome toolkit of pedagogical strategies. Any of these active learning strategies in the classroom is going to make an assessment AI resilient. We don't have the time and the space today to consider these, but there are lots of resources out there, and I've included this in the resource handout that we've been dropping into the chat so that you can consider each of these different strategies for active learning to make assignments AI resilient. We can also fine-tune our AI resilience by adding a personal reflection. Students will still try to use AI, and then the AI will say, as an artificial intelligence, I cannot offer a personal reflection. And it's so cute when they copy and paste that into their discussion prompts, and you have to say, try again. But if you can tie a personal reflection to an assignment where students have to think about the lesson they just learned and apply it to their own life, or think about how that's going to affect their future career, then AI is not the easy answer. We can also consider incorporating real-world problems that tie that assignment to either time or place, especially if we can do so such that that time and place occurs outside of that training database for the AI. OpenAI right now, I think, has a cutoff of October 2023. So if we can talk to students about the political rally that occurred in Richmond, Kentucky, September 10th, and ask them questions about that, that's going to be AI resilient. Another option is to require sources that reside behind a database. AI is trolling all of the internet and all of the freely accessible sources. But if students are required to get that peer-reviewed journal that resides behind your library database, then AI is not going to be the easy answer. And as always, because we are seeing such rapid advances, we need to continuously test and update the assignments to make sure that they're maintaining their AI resilience. Now, I like to think of the fact that, AI created this problem. How about we make AI help us solve this problem? And so I like some meta prompting here to make sure that you're designing the right prompt to get you on the right track. And so I will ask the AI, help me design a prompt that would test the following formative or summative assessment or assignment, whatever you want to call it, and drop the assignment in there, and then have the AI role play. Be the sophomore biology student, be the freshman chemistry student. How would you approach this assignment? How would you answer it? Is it still AI resilient? And then you want to see how easily the AI provides the answer. And do the answers have the quality you're hoping for? And if not, you want to modify and retest until AI is no longer the easy solution for those AI resilient assignments. So if you're concerned about prompting, truly a conversational approach is all you need to get started. Get comfortable taking a first prompt, looking at the results, and then pushing back on those results. If they're generic, if they're missing the point, if they're not hitting the learning objective that you were going for, feel free to push back on that AI and say, can you fine-tune it for this audience? Can you adjust it so that it actually covers this instead? And whenever you want to go for a deeper dive, Ethan and Lilac Malik have a prompt library at moreusefulthings.com. They have prompts for both educators, students, but also for other various and sundry things. So when we think about switching gears and shifting to an AI embracing assessment, there are some rules of engagement I like to consider. So we always want to foster that intrinsic motivation for the students. If they're not intrinsically motivated, then they're going to offload it anyway. There's always been ways to offload assessment work, and this is just one more tool for them to do that. When we do create an AI embracing assessment, we want to make sure that we're communicating clear policies and expectations. We really want to think about, what does cheating mean in the age of AI? What does plagiarism mean? Is saying that you're plagiarizing when you're using an AI really appropriate? Because plagiarism refers to taking the work of someone else. Now we're talking about taking the work of something else. And then I think what we really need to shift into is talking about over-reliance on the AI. When students just automatically go to the AI to complete all of their assignments. I think that's likely going to be the trap that our students fall into. It also helps, because this is so brand new, to offer examples of correct usage. So if you want to talk to students about, I want you to brainstorm on this assignment with the AI, but then the writing needs to be your own, walk them through an example. And then always promote transparency and dialogue. Teach students how you want them to document AI use. It's not plagiarizing, in my opinion, to take the work from the AI, but you do need to cite that you use that tool in co-creating the final product that you're submitting. And documenting AI use can take the form of a syllabus statement that is a boilerplate that is also repeated in every assignment, where the student says, I used this AI tool to do the following task. I modified the content to reflect my own critical thinking and factual accurateness. And I certify that everything is factually accurate that I am submitting, and a product of my own thinking here. And so there's lots of different ways we can document AI use. What I really want to focus on today, though, if you're interested in this, we do have a Spark Talk coming up, developing effective GenAI course policies on November 13th. Please sign up and join us for that. A link for that is in the resources that we've been dropping into the chat. But today I want to focus on this spectrum. We used to be entirely human. The enticement is to go entirely AI, but I really think the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle, where we've got this co-creation or this co-intelligence, where we're working with the AI to produce a work product. And so when we're considering this assignment or assessment redesign, I've got a list of questions to get you thinking. The first main question: which assignments are most vulnerable to being completed with AI? So think about all the reasons why students cognitively offload assignments. I don't see the value in this. I don't have the time for this. This is busy work. Maybe they're overwhelmed by the assignment and it could benefit from some better scaffolding. Lots of reasons why students choose to offload their work to another tool. But more importantly, and this goes back to that liminal space that we're occupying at the moment, has this assignment lost its meaning considering AI capabilities? If you're asking students to complete a multiple choice, fill in the blank quiz, AI can do that. If you're asking students to do a writing assignment that follows a set structure, such as the infamous 5-paragraph essay, AI has got that. If you can give it a template for what your lab report should look like, AI can do that. So these predictable formats are well within the wheelhouse of AI capabilities. And so we need to really think about how what we're assessing needs to shift. A great place to start is with the Oregon State University eCampus Bloom's Taxonomy Revisited, which is a part of the packet that we've been dropping into the chat. With Bloom's Taxonomy Revisited, notice that the remembering and analyzing levels are the most vulnerable to AI. So if we wanted to think about how to amend our assignments, we've got a column here that tells us what AI is capable of, and then we've got another column here that guides us to think about our distinctive human skills. And Kelly, I saw your question. I will get to that later. Thank you. So I've got a list of these constructive GenAI uses, and these AI use guidelines are linked in your packet and repeated there. Notice that GenAI is great at research assistance, brainstorming, outlining, thesis and claim generation, summarization. So especially when our students are being asked to look at those lengthy journal articles in their discipline, and maybe they've never read a peer-reviewed article before and it's intimidating, they can use AI to both summarize that paper, but also to interrogate the paper further to deepen their understanding. And yeah, Dan can post the link to the packet. AI is fantastic at rephrasing sentences or paraphrasing while retaining the original meaning. And that's great, especially when students are confronted with new words that they are still trying to figure out how those words work in the grand scheme of what they're learning. We can also do grammar and syntax checks. We can enhance our vocabulary. Sometimes this can backfire on students. They want to use all the pretty words that GenAI suggests, but then when you interrogate them about their process, they can't explain what it means to be an epistemological philosopher on what such and such topic. And so just warn your students that, okay, make sure you really understand what that words mean. It's kind of like getting the best thesaurus ever. And you want to use all the cool words, but back it up a minute. Collaborative writing. So I love AI for this. I think of it as my sparring partner, my intellectual sparring partner. I'll take a half-baked idea and throw it into the AI, and we'll go back and forth until I get something I'm really happy with. AI can offer feedbacks, revision. AI can help with data visualization. And there are a lot of boutique AIs out there that can assist in integrating various forms of media. So there's, I keep seeing Gamma AI for presentation creation. I'm personally not a fan of that. I like to take control of my presentations. I know exactly what I want them to say. But there's tons of image, audio, video, and other AIs out there that will help students with that. So with all of these constructive Gen AI uses in mind, we need to go back to our list and think about, does this assignment still make sense for this course? And I think that is probably the ugliest question on my list, because it's difficult to look at some assignments that have been your darlings for years and they've worked well in your course. But given what Gen AI can do, does it still make sense to have students complete this assignment, or is there some way we can upskill it to make use of Gen AI or to make it AI resilient? The best thing to do is to back it up and say, okay, what are my specific learning objectives for this assignment? And when we've identified those specific learning objectives, hold that thought and think about, well, how could students use these AI tools while working on this assignment? You may even just ask the AI, how are students likely to do this? AI could undercut the goals of this assignment. So think through that. I have a colleague and her superpower is catastrophizing. And I worked with her very closely for about a year, and come to find out her entire family catastrophizes. And so think through all the ways that your assignment could go wrong. No, Heather, it's not you. I love you to pieces, but it wasn't you. But if you can think about all the ways the assignment could go wrong, students are clever, and maybe the way we say it is not the way they hear it. And so how can we mitigate how AI could undercut the assignment? But on the flip side, how can AI enhance the assignment? That's the exciting part. And think through, where would your students need help figuring that out? Our students are not all coming to us as digital natives. I've had a student back in May tell me, he said, I don't want to use AI. I'm afraid it's going to steal me, literally his words. And so we do have students who are coming in and maybe resisting. I worked with a faculty member over the summer, and her student came to the class and they had this is how we're using Gen AI in the course discussion. And the student told her that I refuse to use AI because it's lazy, and I think you're undercutting your job, and I refuse to participate. And so, okay, it's a big conversation to have there. So think about how students are going to react to this and how you can help them figure it out, and what kind of training you need to offer so that everybody has that minimum level of proficiency to be successful on the assessment. And then really, I think what we're going to see as we interact more and more with the Gen AI is that we're going to wind up focusing on the process rather than the final product. And always think about, how can you make the assignment more meaningful for students? When they can derive meaning from it, the intrinsic motivation is going to increase. If you can always tie it back to, hey, what are your learning goals for this course? I'm sure your student has never been asked that before. What are your learning goals for this course? What do you hope to take from this course to make you a successful practitioner in your field post-graduation? How can I support you more in this work? Just make that open, engaging dialogue. I'm a big believer in engaged pedagogy and meeting our students where they're at and keeping that line of communication open so that we can talk through these challenges together and hopefully create a brighter future with GenAI as we do this. So 2 case studies I love to cite. I was at a computational summit. So here I am. I'm trained as a chemist. And so now I spend all my days doing GenAI, which is just mind blowing to me, but here we are. And so I went to this computer science summit, very out of place, but there were others like me who were presenting these case studies. One I really loved was back in November. This computer scientist was working with an intro to coding class. And in this intro to coding class, she gave students the task to write code for a program on a whiteboard first. Then they had to use ChatGPT and prompt it to write that same code for that particular program. Once students had these side by side, they were tasked with comparing them. And so as the instructor was walking around the room, right off the bat, she noticed that early in on the ChatGPT output, there was a line of code that they had not been taught in class yet. And so if a student had copied that directly from the AI and submitted it as their work, the instructor would have known that, yeah, they didn't do this. They relied on the AI. So that was the first point that she noticed. And then she noticed that later in the code, the students were going to their whiteboard and they started erasing. And she said, whoa, 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 what are you doing there? And the students all said, well, yeah, we know it had that extra line of code. We don't know yet. But down here, ChatGPT used this line of code, which differs from our line of code. And well, we think that AI is correct. And actually, you know, guess who was correct? It was not the AI. Students were erasing the correct code from their whiteboards. And so I love this example because it proved very quickly to the students that the AI is not infallible. I really highly encourage faculty to find that use case where the AI fails in a spectacular fashion and then let your students discover that for themselves. They need to learn that the AI is still a baby technology and they are still the experts at this. Even if they're just now learning the discipline, they know more than the AI because they have the context and they have the faculty support to work through this. Another case study that I really enjoyed, students were tasked with writing an art endowment fundraising letter. And I don't know about you all, but I hate asking for money. Awkward. And so students were split into 4 groups, entirely AI authored funding letter, entirely human authored funding letter. Then they had an AI written with human edits version and human written with AI edits. And so these students each generated their letter following the command for their group. And then students came together as a whole and they evaluated the 4 letters and they talked about which letter was easiest to write, which letter seems to be the most effective, which letter saved the most time. And so of these 4 categories, does anybody want to guess which letter was the best?
Human written AI edit.
Ah, good guess. AI written with human edits was the crowd favorite. Yes, Kelly, you've heard my talk before. You knew you're cheating or you're using AI. So yeah, Lauren, hybrid intelligence, or Ethan Mollick calls it co-intelligence. The AI written was the most time effective because students didn't know how to get started. How do you approach people you've never met before and ask them for money? Okay. And so, yeah, I thought that was really interesting that getting past that blinking cursor on the empty page, AI written with human edits was the fan favorite. All right, so with that in mind, and we are dropping the handouts. So what if you assign your students a scholarly article summary? Pre-AI, we would ask these students to read the article, write a summary, and then we would assess that summary of the article. All right. Now we've got this problem though. Every student has this helper in the background. And so we need to think about how we can adapt this assignment to become AI embracing, because is the student actually going to write the summary? Is the student even going to read the article? Okay, and so this is the problem that we're running into. AI is fantastic at reading these complicated articles and summarizing them for the students, and the student can, go back and forth and say, well, what about the methodology? Well, what about this? And what did the author mean when they said this word? All right, so there's a way that we can go about this process. And so in your packet that we've been dropping into the chat, there's this scholarly article exercise, and we don't have time today to go through this, but in the workshop version of this presentation, we workshop this together. And I think this is an incredibly valuable process, because if you can take this back to your academic units and take any assignment that you used to do pre-AI that you have identified as being AI vulnerable for all the regular reasons, or because AI is the easy answer, go through this checklist and ask yourself, what are the learning objectives for this assignment? How could the students use the tools? How can AI undercut the goals of the assignment? How can AI enhance the assignment? Where do students need help figuring this out? And then how can we focus on the process? How can we make the assignment more meaningful? How can we support them more in the work? Every time I have done this exercise with different groups of faculty, they come up with different answers. The answer I came up with, suppose that the student prompts the AI to summarize the article. Then with that summary, the student could apply key concepts from the article to a real world scenario, to a case study, or they could analyze what the person did in that particular article and how does that apply to the experiment that we're running today? What modifications have we made? Why did we make those modifications? Do you think it's going to affect the experiment? So we can critically analyze the author's methodology, their findings, their conclusions. We could have the class engage in a structured debate using the summary to understand and represent the different stances. I had one faculty member suggest, well, you know what, have that student read the article anyway, and then go back and have the AI summarize the article and teach that student how to use the AI to fill in the gaps they missed. I think I love that one best of all, because it's teaching the student how to use AI effectively to further their understanding of the material. And so I think we should give credit for submitting the summary, but what we're shifting is what we're assessing is shifting to that higher level work on Bloom's taxonomy. All right, so when you're working through this, we have some additional tools to consider. Leon Vers and his associates published the AI assessment scale roughly 12 months ago. And I've got a link to this at the bottom here. So it's an archive.org paper. And I appreciate that Leon and his cohort has really thoughtfully considered both the feedback they have gotten on this AI assessment scale, but also they have incorporated into this AI assessment scale how the AI has advanced in the last 12 months. And so one of the criticisms they received early on was this stoplight coloring where no AI is perceived to be bad and full AI is perceived to be green, good. And there's also this idea of, well, maybe we need to fine tune this. And so we do have an updated AI assessment scale, and this one is difficult to read. So I have provided a link to this. And I invite you to follow Leon's blog because he is stepping through this updated AI assessment scale. And not only are the colors better, but we're looking more at this back and forth between the AI that I think makes more sense than just strictly no AI or all human, like the simple continuum I showed initially. And so we go now from no AI all the way up to step 5, where we're doing AI exploration. And I especially like this one because it dovetails very nicely with the 7 key GenAI skills that I have identified that I think we really need to talk about weaving into the 4-year undergraduate curriculum. And this does look a lot like a Bloom's taxonomy, where our foundation is most certainly that AI literacy piece. And then once we have our basic AI literacy, we really need to work with students so that they can understand and leverage AI tools effectively. And that includes some basic prompting, but also teaching them that they can't take the output at face value. They need to vet that output and verify that it's factually accurate. They need to do some lateral searches and verify that the information has real sources. So we also have to think about, are we hallucinating sources? Yes, Kelly, so Leon also used a Creative Commons license, so you can take his framework and adapt it without requesting permission, because we love our open education resources. Thank you. And so as we work through this continuum, again, if you would like to hear more about this, I really think that the communication and human AI collaboration at the top matches his AI exploration. And so we will discuss this further on October 9th when we talk about preparing students for an AI enhanced workplace. So another teaser, I apologize. Another resource that I have included in those handouts is the AI decision tree. And so with the AI decision tree, I like this guide from Oregon State University eCampus. I encourage you to get on their website and just look through all of their AI information. But this really helps you decide when and how to incorporate AI into your work. So I've included just a little snippet here, but the 2-page reference, the 2-page handout is in that packet that I've been dropping into the chat. All right, and as your students are working through this, look for the desire paths. I can think of times when I've designed the most elegant lab and my students have taken it in a totally different direction. I've been like, oh guys, that's not what I intended. And they're like, okay, but that's what we thought you meant. So look for those desire paths and how assignments are completed and adjust accordingly. And so I did leave plenty of time today for questions. And so let me go ahead and snag these questions in the chat. Let's see. So Kelly said, my son is 18 and a sophomore in college. He refuses to use AI at all because he doesn't trust what it is doing with his data. If that comes up with a student when I assign something that incorporates AI, how can I address these concerns? Kelly, that is a fantastic question. Students have the option to be very careful about the data that they input. But a lot of the AIs also allow you to disable the memory for a particular session. And so if you disable the memory for a particular session, it won't hold on to that information. I personally think that it's best practice to make sure that you are not inputting any personally identifiable information into any of these AIs. And I'm very cautious about that as well. I like to use AI to write letters of recommendation. And when I say write, I mean co-create letters of recommendation. But I always take my students' information, and if they provide me with a resume or a CV or a personal statement, I make sure to turn that into a PDF and redact all the information that you wouldn't see on, say, a LinkedIn profile. And so I would caution your students that there are ways that you can interact with the AIs such that their personal information is not being captured. And that is just a best practice. All right, let's see. And let's see, we've got other sessions coming up. I have put in the links for 2 of those in the handouts that we've been dropping into the chat. Let's see, what is the role of discussion forums in online classes given the capabilities of AI? Stephanie, that's an amazing question. And so this summer, I spent some time co-facilitating an AI for faculty course through Macmillan. And as an administrator working on GenAI policies and GenAI programming to support my faculty and staff, I had a unique perspective, but my co-facilitator had the worst possible case scenario: online, asynchronous English professor. And so discussion forums were a nightmare. And when you see a student using AI to complete such a low point value assessment, such as a discussion forum, you've got a problem there. And so AI is not the only problem we have with discussion forums. There's also got to be regular and substantive interaction from the professor. You can't set it and forget it. And I've seen that AI responses on the behalf of students are frustrating their classmates because the AI tends to use all the pretty words, but provide nothing of substance for the other students to respond to. And so I would discourage the use of GenAI for something as low stakes as a discussion forum. And discussion forums perhaps need to go back to that. Does this still make sense in my course? I think when done well, they can be an excellent use of time for the students. But GenAI is going to make us rethink all of that. So I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know. And Sharon has a follow-up. Do we trust the AI not to keep info? No, we do not trust it. The AI supposedly does not incorporate it directly into its data set, depending on which AI you're looking at. I think we always assume the AI is going to keep the information. All right. And let's see, we have a question here. What is a potential risk of Gen AI in our classroom? Oh my gosh, lots of risk. I think perhaps the biggest risk is that students are using the Gen AI and they don't realize that the output needs to be corroborated with other sources. The Gen AI's main purpose is to satisfy the human user. And that's a consequence of how we've trained them through this reinforcement learning through human feedback. And so I think the biggest risk is students taking the output as gospel and dropping that into all of their assignments and thinking it's okay. And so to combat that, we want to teach our students a minimum of AI literacy and make sure that they understand that this is a tool and not to completely outsource their thinking to it. All right, so let me know if that didn't answer your question.
Thank you. You answered my question. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right, let's see. Rose is asking, what are some AI-powered platforms you recommend for implementing active learning in higher ed? Have those successfully addressed data privacy issues? How can be sure about this? Okay, lots of great questions, Rose. And so when I'm talking about AIs to use in the classroom, equitable access is a major concern for me. I want to see that we're using the free AI platforms because I'm going to guess there's nobody from Arizona State University on this call, and we don't have their budget such that we can give everybody a ChatGPT subscription. And so I recommend using ChatGPT 4.0 Mini, which is free. Claude has a free version. Gemini has a free version. And then there's Copilot, which if your school has not turned that on in Microsoft 365, you can access Copilot using the Bing search. Yeah, it's still called Bing search. And so those are the 4 platforms that I recommend. And then have those successfully address data privacy issues? No. Again, we've got to warn our students not to put in personally identifiable information, nor do they need to be doing that for any of their classmates. And the only way to be sure about this is to talk to your students and just remind them that their personal information, they're putting it out into the wild, and find a scenario where that's a bad idea. I will also mention that there is some published research, Rose, that has demonstrated that even prompting can leak some personal information to the AIs. There was the best case scenario I can think about was a woman who was asking about the best way to navigate a hook turn. Come to find out, hook turns are unique to Melbourne. And from her prompting history, the AI was able to discover that this was a female between the ages of 40 and 45 living in Melbourne. So I don't remember what the entire history was, but some information can be inferred because we just naturally share stuff. That's how we are as humans. And so we can't really be sure, but we can teach our students to be wary. And when given the option to not save a chat history, choose that option. All right, so Rose, I hope that answered your question. I'm going to move on to the next one. Let's see, Andy is an ELT educator, and his concern is that the cognitive process of learning a language could be, for most cases, delayed more than ignited. Yes, okay, so Andy, my foreign language instructors are the ones that have probably pushed back the absolute most against the AI because it is so easy to offload this to the AI, because on the surface it appears that the AI translates well. And I've had some language instructors tell me that no, it does not translate well. I had a situation this summer where a Spanish instructor said that didn't translate well at all. And so if we can funnel our students into constructive uses of the AI, as in practicing, ChatGPT on your phone has the ability to see, hear, and speak. And so I have seen where someone practicing Spanish will speak to the AI on their phone, and then they will ask ChatGPT, how did I do with my accent? Did I pronounce this word correctly? Can you offer me ways to pronounce it better? I can't roll my R's. That would be me all the way. Can you suggest ways to teach me how to roll my R's? So I would advise students to use the AI to practice the language they're attempting to learn, and to ask the AI to role play with them. You can ask the AI to be a tour guide in a foreign country, and then help that student ask basic questions. You know, where's the bathroom? How do I find the train station? And then have that AI act as a helpful guide to correct them when they misspeak. So Andy, I hope that answers your question. And if not, please let me know. Stephanie, yes, discussion forums are a nightmare. And Kelly points out that discussion boards are pedagogically limited. My favorite answer, I'm stealing that. Collaborative annotation is much better. And there are a lot of tools to help with the collaborative annotation process. Here at EKU, we use a tool called Perusall. So Perussal. Or Dan, am I spelling that right? You guys use that in GSD 105.
Perussal.
Okay, I thought it was 2 S's. Perussal. There we go. And so Perusall is a collaborative annotation tool that helps students interact with material. Thank you, Sharon. I have not used it as much. I used it only briefly in a psychology class. And so that would be helpful. And Heather suggests making discussion forums more personal and less a knowledge check can help. And I totally agree with that, because anything you're doing that's a knowledge checked, AI can totally do that. All right. And then Lauren suggests Copilot, but also Unriddle. I'm not familiar with Unriddle. I can add that to my list of AIs to investigate. I'm also hearing a lot of great things about Perplexity, which Lauren mentions that I haven't had time to play with. Okay. Deepshika, could you kindly share your insights on how AI-driven grading and personalized student feedback can enhance the learning and assessment process in educational settings? That is an excellent question, and I think that is a question that dances right along the capabilities of what AI can do successfully and what it cannot do quite yet. AI-driven grading for simple assessments, such as fill in the blank, multiple choice. I think, yeah, it can definitely do that. I think we are getting close to being able to have it apply a rubric successfully as well. But if we're having AI grade essays, we're running into problems because all of our generative AI technologies are still based on statistical text prediction. And so they don't have the cognition necessarily to truly evaluate a student's writing and offer a meaningful grade. And I have seen this demonstrated in peer-reviewed literature where an essay was given 4 different or 5 different student names, and the same essay was fed into the AI, and the AI gave different grades depending on which student submitted the essay. And so be very cautious with AI-driven grading when it extends beyond the very simplistic. There are platforms that sit on top of these frontier models. Conmigo is probably the best well-known platform that can enhance the learning process for students. Conmigo is a paid subscription service, and I think it's primarily geared towards K through 12, and it can do some AP exams. And Conmigo is an excellent case of the use of AI because it always relies on the Socratic method. It will never just spit out an answer for students. And if students say, I don't understand why I need to learn trigonometry, this is terrible, the AI will say, okay, I appreciate that. What are you interested in? And if the student says soccer, the Conmigo AI will recall that and find ways to weave soccer into the trigonometry practice, not only in that session, but also in future sessions. And so we can't replicate this easily for a platform that can do all the things. But I think we can begin to replicate this with GPTs from ChatGPT or GEMs from Gemini, essentially building a model that sits on top of the frontier model, and that model is what students interact with. And so long answer, but I think that's where we're at. We're going to see more of these models, these GPTs or these GEMs being created for students to interact that way. All right, let's see. Lots of people have to go teach, spark some ideas. Are there tools that we can use reliably to detect AI use in student work? Comprehensive exams versus class assignments. Right now, there are no AI detection tools that are not fraught with problems for comprehensive exams. That being said, I am seeing some real promise in some AI tools, such as the one Grammarly uses to detect AI writing by students. And so the Grammarly AI detector is effective because it literally does what tracked changes does in like a Google document or in Word, in that it detects when large chunks of text have been copied and pasted. And so if we have students drop stuff into a Google document and we just review how quickly things were assimilated in that document, if we see bunches of copy and paste, we can guess that AI was used to generate that, or they're copy and pasting from Wikipedia, which has always been a problem. And so there aren't any tools yet. I really, Kelly, tell faculty to just rely on their spidey sense. You're gonna know when the student's voice changes. You're gonna know when the students give you a lot of very elegant prose, but say nothing at all with the prose. And so just be prepared to have a conversation with a student and interrogate their process. Ask them, hey, I noticed this writing was different, or your exam was different, or your assignment seemed different, or you missed the targeted learning objective. A lot of times students won't prompt the AI effectively, and so they miss the learning outcome entirely. All right. Lindsay, does anyone have advice for revising grading practices to emphasize process over product? I can think of some ways, but would love a handy color-coded chart, wouldn't we all? And then Dominic, oh, Dom, I'm so glad you're here. So Dom uses a labor-based grade contract. So he follows some of our ungrading principles here at EKU. And I think scaffolding the assignment and emphasizing the small steps in the process rather than the final product is an excellent way to go. And so I would advocate for lots of touch points, lots of check-ins with those assignments. Lindsay, I would suggest that if students are using GenAI at all, that, hey, GenAI brainstorming, that's a touch point. And then once you've done the brainstorming, how did you modify this to make something that I can use? And that becomes another touch point. All right. Kelly, thank you for Perusol's website. Alexandra has found Perplexity's writing and textability to be quite good, and she uses it the most right now. I am happy to hear that. Oh, Hypothesis is another shared annotation tool. I had not heard of that. Thank you so much, Kelly. Let's see, Jay asked, can you recommend a particular software for determining if a student has used AI to complete an assignment? I cannot. Those of us that regularly participate in the AI and education group, we are all very opposed to using any software solution to look for AI use, just because they present so many false positives and so many false negatives. I think it's much better to evaluate the assignment and just ask yourself, does this seem like the student really met the learning outcomes? And if they didn't, then that's an obvious answer. You know, they lose the points. And if the writing is not at the right level, that's another big tell. If you're in an undergraduate psychology class and they're writing as if for a PhD dissertation, then they probably used AI for that. All right, so I recommend against software. And then Sharon asked ways we use Perusol at EKU. We use it quite a bit. Nathan, what is Flexi? Can you tell us about that if you're still on the call?
Flexi is from CK12, and it's
Okay.
It's similar to Kamigo. It's not quite as advanced, but it allows students to go through, and it takes them step by step through either math or science problems, but also can give them other examples of similar to those problems. So, and so it's also free, so it's a good alternative to using Kamigo.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. So that's on my of AIs to evaluate. And then Carla, were you thinking about Conmigo? Because I've thrown the spelling in there. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Nathan.
Yes, thank you.
And yes, Kelly, do not rely on the AI detection tools. Oh, that's an excellent point. So Kelly's had students given zeros on assignments who are actually just good writers. Yeah, I don't like the use of AI detection tools because I feel like it just adds another level of anxiety to the classroom that we're just not intending. I don't want to hunt people that are using AI. I want to have that open dialogue with students about how are you using AI and are you using it productively? And Scott says, I've always noticed that AI uses wonderful punctuation where most of my students do not type in complete sentences. Welcome to the texting generation. And Nathan, yes, talk to your students, learn how they speak. That's more of that engaged pedagogy. I'm a huge fan of that. And Kelly points out they might be copy and pasting from other work they've done in similar classes too, building on prior work, have discussions with the students. I can't emphasize that enough. And Scott says, look at how students talk in a discussion board versus how they respond in test. Okay, Rose asks, what about using AI for proofreading assessments? Do you consider this cheating? This might change the voice of students. Okay, Rose, you need to think about what are your learning objectives for the assessment. If you want students to produce a polished piece of work, then using an AI to do so would not be cheating. I know Grammarly smacks me all the time because I say I have to, and it says must, use the word must. And I should point out that something as simple as using Grammarly to proofread your grammar is enough to get an assessment flagged as entirely AI written. So just another reason not to use the AI tools. And so, Rose, I would consider carefully, what are you hoping to achieve with the assessment? And if the goal is to produce a polished piece of work that students are submitting, then think about if you're okay with that. Personally, I would be. Okay. Nathan is looking toward the maker process iteration and use as AI is one of the steps. That sounds like an excellent use of AI. And so James, at your university, their students may be called to attend an authenticity interview and explain their work. Could you tell us more about that? If you're still on the call. Let's see, James. Yeah, James is still here.
Yes, I am here. Hello.
Yes. Could you tell us more
Okay.
about this authenticity
Yes,
interview?
we're informing students that they can be actually called in to present their work and explain how they sort of craft their and written their assignment. We're also asking them to keep, draft versions of their work as well.
Okay, that makes
That's
sense.
not an easy one. That's not an easy one because you need to have a second examiner for these authenticity interviews.
Right. And that makes sense. I think that if we're taking the time with our students and before we send it to student conduct, let's pump the brakes here and let's talk to our students about how they're using AI and whether we feel like that's an appropriate use or not. My colleague says, is that a constructive she says, is that a productive use of AI?
Yeah.
So we need to think about that. Thank you. All right, we've got about 60 seconds remaining. Does anybody have any final questions? Oh, and Sharon asked, only when AI is suspected or randomly? I would think when AI is suspected. And James can answer that. All right, well, I appreciate everyone's time and attention. I get so much value out of presenting this material because I love hearing the feedback I get from faculty. I do these Spark Talks the second Wednesday of every month. And then starting tomorrow, I have workshops that occur every other Thursday. And so the workshops are not recorded and they're a deeper dive into these topics where we actually take the time to go into breakout rooms and work through some of these strategies together. And I think people get a lot of value out of that because they walk out with action plans in their mind. And so just if you're on my list, I will send out the link to the recording as soon as I have that published. And now that I have captured your information, you can look forward to more emails with invitations to future sessions. And so please feel free to just email me directly if you want to sign up for tomorrow's workshop and you haven't seen that yet. The more the merrier, and I appreciate everybody's time and attention today.